Hey everybody, Alex here, and welcome to an All-American pickup video. And the irony is, we actually have some All-American pickups in here for once. Nothing like a 7 a.m. Coke. So, in August, I actually went to the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo with my friend and his brother, and we also went to a small, like, I guess you could say, TCG trading card game event. More so for him, he's actually collecting a slabbed original 151 Pokemon card set. The older, the better. And I think at this point he only has, I think, 20 more Pokemon to go. And his plan with that is to make a collage in his office of all of them. And I think he's cutting it off at like grade 8, I think, for all of them. So yeah, big money. So going to an event like that for him is really a good look because he can trade stuff around, and upgrade as he needs to. But even going to that, I was like, oh dude, there's no way there won't be at least one vendor with video games, and luckily there was. And he and I were chatting it up, and he actually mentioned, like, oh, there's a show out next weekend, which is Long Island. I was like, yeah, we're actually going to that too. So this is my third time going to the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. And being local to New York, a lot of the stores I see at this particular show I am familiar with. Some I've also seen in Too Many Games, like Forgotten Freshness. They always bring a ridiculous assortment of stuff. Brooklyn Video Games is always there. I've been to the store a few times myself, the original location. And, I think one of the bigger, I guess you could say, challenges with this show is being in New York. You got a price to New York, right? So a lot of stuff I was seeing was good stuff, but just not stuff I was willing to pay online prices for, because I'd rather give them cash up front. Even me literally negotiating with somebody saying, what if I did cash? He only took $2 off because he has to at least break even. Totally get it, but I'm just like, Jesus Christ, at these margins, like that's not a good business practice, if you ask me, to be running it so tight that you can't even negotiate or even bundle as much as you'd want. That being said, there were a bunch of vendors who were doing that, but one vendor in particular, his prices just seemed completely out of left field, and a lot of people were actually mentioning it to him, myself included. I said, I normally don't do this, and truthfully, what you have is really good, and it should be moving. But I showed him an eBay listing, and I'm like, dude, you're like $80 above what the online price is. And he's like, well, it's convention tax. And I was kind of like, we don't have to pay for your table, like, not to say you should give away your shirt, but at least be competitive, because if somebody looks at your table, goes on eBay, sees it's $80 less, and on average the sale prices are $80 less, why would I have a problem with hitting a fucking button? Is basically what I'm saying. And I wasn't the only one. Some other people pointed out, and it's just like, truthfully, like, I want to give you my business. I'm not telling you have to match it, because of course New York is New York, but at least nope, just shut it down. And even one particular vendor I spoke to, even in my negotiating, he was just like, well, I paid, same thing, he's like, I paid 50 for this, the lowest I could do is 51. I'm like, okay, I get it. But in terms of like the show itself, it's not very expensive to go. I don't know how expensive a table is, but I also know how expensive New York is. So while I get it, I don't really think, for me personally, who is pretty much wrapped up on all the retro stuff, unless it's something out of left field or like a artist alley sort of thing, I truthfully am just not in the market to drop as much on one particular game as I used to, because I have them. And even if I don't have them, I'm being a little bit more picky. And honestly, the guy at the card show was way more willing to negotiate, which I don't know if it was his personal collection or a store, or he has an online thing, or a combination of the two. But, we chatted it up, and, he had some heavy hitter stuff, and I was like, would you be willing to negotiate on that? And he's like, nope. Just flat out told me, nope. Like, that's my childhood copy, it's a little bit sentimental. I'm even debating on taking it off the table. Like, there was a bunch of conversations I had with him about that. But if you've never been to the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. I realize I'm sounding a little negative on the vending perspective of it. The venue is awesome. It's an aerospace museum, so you're never going to see anything else like it. There's like moon landers. I think there's hulls of an F-14 in there, and that's where they put the arcades. And the arcade setup there is actually really good. They take up about like 2.5 floors. And then on the top floor, they actually had like a whole Dreamcasting with different games you could play. And my friends and I, we played Soul Calibur like we used to. And down in the arcade, we played a couple of rounds of Capcom versus SNK as well. So if you're going there at least for the arcade part, you're going to have a good time. The vending area is a little tight, but that's because of the nature of the venue. And unfortunately, the show can't really grow much more because the museum is not massive by any stretch of the imagination. So once they hit capacity, that's kind of it. But I'll get to those pickups and I'll introduce them as I come into them. But let's get the all-American stuff out of the way first. PlayAsia's been, I guess, trying to liquidate a bunch of their older stuff. Like their personal releases. So they've been doing a lot of really, really good sales as of late. And with that, obviously we pick stuff up because that's what we do here on the Return to Mother Base All-American Pickup Video Program. So first off, we got Apex Heroines Platinum. This is sort of a, I guess you could say like a hack and slash, cultured, I believe is now the term, game. This is on Steam. Originally, and I've heard people say, mostly from Hallowed Be Thy Game, that it actually runs decently well. It may not graphically look all that good because Switch is Switch, but it is one of those things where even me watching gameplay, this is not something I'm going to sit down in front of the TV and play. This is something I'm going to pop up on the handheld during some downtime at work or on lunch or whatever, and just mess around with, it's not, the end-all be-all of, like, action RPG storylines. And there's another one coming out as well. I think it's Taboo Trials. That's coming out later on. I think it's also being published by Leoful, and it's kind of similar, just as cultured. Also picked up Sea Horizon. It looked like kind of like a strategy naval RPG, and you unlock different characters. There's a roguelike mechanic, and I think there's some deck building in there too. This was $20. It looked interesting enough. It came out a very long time ago, and I just never picked it up just because I didn't really read into it. But I did get this, or I did place this order for this game. I stack my PlayAsia orders together so that, I get like a little care package, and I save on shipping. I think I ordered this at the same time I did Dead in Vinland, which is also like more of like a survival Viking thing as well. And that one was also on stupid discount, ultra liquidation clearance sale. Gift. This is from Bushiroad. They've been putting out a lot of stuff recently. This is sort of like a puzzle platformer game. Looked really, really charming. Kind of in the style of Little Nightmares, except instead of wearing a hood, you wear a old school diving helmet a la 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Looked really interesting. Looked really cute. And this, I think, is going to get a U.S. release later on. But as I do, if it has English on it and it's like $19.99 or $22.99 because of exchange rates, fuck it. Going to buy it anyway. So this is Bo, a very Okami-looking Metroid style, almost said it, game. Looked really charming. Some reviews or previews or impressions, some people said it was kind of hollow, and Hollow Knight. Said it was more flash than substance, I guess you could say. And I honestly feel like Metroid or Castlevania style games at this point are being put on such a high pedestal. I mean, personally, I got rid of or purged a bunch of them recently, just trying them, and they're very, I don't even want to sound negative and say they're derivative of one another, but they kind of look at each other, they copy each other, and then they throw Souls-like stuff in it, and then I'm just like, it's anime, cool. It has Souls combat, cool. It has some rogue element stuff in it, cool. It has 3D graphics, cool. We put it on the Switch, cool. The frame rate is terrible, cool. It's getting very, very checkboxy, and this one in particular looked to be the most unique out of all the ones that I have recently played and picked up, so thus I went with that one despite what those initial impressions were. Now this is something I don't normally do. I got a FPS, the Stalker Trilogy, on the PS4. Now, the Stalker games have been on the PC forever and a day. Back in the days of games with Windows Live. And it's a very well-known series in the PC gaming community as sort of like a survival, first-person shooter, Metro-style game, open world. There's been 3 of them so far. The official sequel is finally coming out. I believe it's going to be on Game Pass day 1. Xbox, PC exclusive. But the team itself, which I believe is based out of the Ukraine, for whatever reason, they decided to put them on the PS4. And I truthfully, with the way things are going with Microsoft recently, if they have any say in this, I have a feeling that Stalker 2 proper is going to show up on PS5 sooner rather than later. But they put the original trilogy on the PS4, presuming people are going to try to get into the other or the newer entry. I guess you could. Wow, Alex. Presuming you also have an Xbox and Game Pass, that you're probably going to want to play a sequel. Totally get it. Now, I do have them all on PC. I was thinking, oh, cool. Like, I saw this, and it made me think, hey, let me check it out. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, no, games with Windows Live. After an hour of monkeying around, I just said, fuck it. We're doing it with a controller. I don't care anymore. I literally picked up all these games way back in the day on Steam. I would dare say they were new, and they were all super duper cheap because they never had a super duper high budget. But the team itself is very passionate about cleaning it up, and there's tons of mods and all that stuff. But me just trying to play it on my laptop and even on my desktop, they can run it no problem. It's just the initial setup is just so frustrating to me at this point. And they're old enough, and I presume they still make enough sales that it's just not justified to go back and clean it up. You know what I mean? Which I totally get. But this is a Japanese exclusive physical. I got it through Video Games Plus. They got a bunch of them. I was originally going to get it on PlayAsia and stack it into a future order, but it had already sold out. And VGP has it going in and out of stock as time goes on. I think they've restocked it maybe 3 or 4 times as of this recording. And as these things go, I always get at least one Evercade game. Got the Pico Interactive Collection 4. I truthfully really just got this for Glover. And as of this recording, Limited Run Games in their infinite fucking wisdom decided, hey guys, guess what? We're putting Glover on the Switch. It's like, son of a bitch. Would have preferred that, to be honest. But again, the Evercade system is also pretty good because of the way they bundle these collections. So in this one, you have Glover, Risky Wood, Zero Tolerance, Skull Jaeger, which was like a weird, I think, platformer thing on the Super Nintendo, Street Racer, Target Renegade, Bad Street Brawler, Mermaids of Atlantis, Star X, and The Fidgets, which I have no idea what that is. As I said, I mean, these things are also much less expensive. So, and me just wanting to get Glover in some way, shape, or form kind of worked. And this game I actually found by mistake. I got this off of Amazon. This is the, oh god, here we go. The Dungeon of Nechbluch, the Amulet of Chaos, and this is the Chicken edition. I actually have this on Games with Amazon or Amazon Games. It was a free game at some point. And I don't know how this showed up in my feed or in a recommendation or some such thing along those lines. It's advertised as a sarcastic D&D game, but it plays like Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, or a little bit of like that XCOM-y sort of thing. And I thought, okay, let me check it out. Started playing it on PC. It's actually pretty funny. It's also pretty adult. I was surprised. That M rating, it's a hard M. Like, I'm being completely honest with you. It was pretty fun, but you know what? I just was like, I'd rather sit in front of the TV and play this on a controller, maybe have the option of using, a portable thing. Looked up Switch gameplay. That was a hard, fast, never mind, and I went with the PS5 version, which I will use the portal for. The Switch version was literally choking on the opening cutscene, which is rendered. I was like, wow, that's a thing. That is a thing. And I'm putting this on video record because I have a bet going with a dear friend of mine that the Switch 2 will not be backwards compatible. And if it is not backwards compatible, I get 2 free games of my choosing. And I am picking the most fucking expensive thing I can find that is not a limited edition. So fuck you. Moving along. All right, convention-y pickups. Or I guess you could say Long Island in combination with the card show. So from the card show, I grabbed a copy of Yu-Gi-Oh! Forgotten Memories on the PS1. I've been looking for this for a long time. I actually ordered this on eBay like 5 or 6 years ago, and it got lost in the mail. and and me literally messaging the seller, I was like, I think it got lost in the mail. And he's like, let me check the tracking. He looked at the tracking. He's like, dude, it's been sitting in frickin' like the Bronx for like 6 weeks. Here's your money back. He's like, it's long gone. Never showed up. I was kind of hoping it would. But it was, the unfortunate part was it included the cards. And at the time, I actually really wanted the cards. They're not even that great by today's comparison, but it was just something cool. And even when I grabbed this from the card convention, I was like, are the cards in? He's like, dude, we're at a card convention. What do you think? No, of course they're not in there. And he also had a copy of the Jack and Daxter collection on the PS3, and this was $20 flat, which is a very, very good and competitive price considering I see this for average of 30 to 40 most of the time. And, I asked him, like, well, why are you getting rid of this stuff? Because, he had mentioned he has a Twitch channel and all this stuff. He's like, to be honest with you, I'm not, like, he's like, I collect, but if I have it in a more convenient format, I'm like, oh, you and I are, like, the same. I prefer to own a physical copy, but if I have it on a more convenient format, I'll play it that way. He's like, yeah, exactly. I have it. Because he's like, I have PlayStation Premium, so I have access to all this stuff. And he's like, I got a bunch of subscriptions like 10 years ago, back when they used to discount for Black Friday, and I'm like good to like 2050. And I'm like, oh, cool, because I'm good to like 2038. Really, really sad, right? Now, at Long Island, I got 3 games here. Picked up, keep it on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Train. I did get the Falsebound Kingdom on the GameCube. This case is very ratty. The cartridge and the manual are okay, but the case is really shitty. This also did not include the cards, and it had Harpy's Feather Duster, which, if you know the show, that's a big deal card. Of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Releases on console, this is considered to be the weakest one. I've never played it, so I can't speak to that, but anytime you can find a GameCube game that doesn't cost 150 American dollars, you're doing pretty good. This was, I think it was 40, but I bundled it with Mario vs. Donkey Kong Mini Land. I think it's March of the Minis too. I think with this he did 50 for the 2 of them. And the other game I picked up was the prequel, which was Mario vs. Donkey Kong Mini Land Mayhem. And I've been looking for this one for a very long time. But every time I see it, it's like $20. And I'm like, I am not spending that much on that game. There's like, you see it all the time. I'm like, it's not worth that. And this was the particular vendor where, he had it for, I think, 12. And this is how cheap I am, just putting it out there. And I said, would you do 10? And he goes, no. And I go, what about cash? And he goes, 11. I was like, fuck you, fine. Like, I will be that guy. And I was halfway tempted to give him a $100 bill, but I'm not that much of an asshole. Although I probably should have, because he begrudgingly was like, oh, I have to give you change now. One thing I will mention, though, actually, I skipped over this part of the convention. There were a lot of vendors actually buying stuff, too, which I thought was cool, but buying it in cash, which I figured table credit would be more common. And I'm presuming one of them had a bunch of goodies, the app, like promotional and marketing stuff hanging around. So I'm guessing he works for like Goodies Corporate or something, because I brought a bunch of stuff which I originally was planning to use towards, trade bait. And based on what I had, he's like, I'll just give you cash. And, we went back and forth and whatnot. And I got rid of some heavies. I got rid of some Snickle Fritz, which was actually really handy. And his offer was pretty good. So all this stuff technically from the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo was free because it was stuff I rotated out. And on the OG Xbox, because the FOMO continues, picked up a copy of Hunter the Reckoning. This is sort of like, it's based on a tabletop game. It's a action RPG a la like a Diablo, but done in sort of like, I guess you could say like Vampire the Masquerade, modern day vampires, vampire hunters. What's the other one called? Vampire the Masquerade Blade, I guess you could say, something similar to that. And for whatever reason, I think, again, the FOMO continues and people keep talking about all these old games and memories of the Xbox. I picked up a copy of Splinter Cell. Never played these. And this is a backwards compatible game on the 360. And as of this recording, Microsoft is rolling out like a new Xbox One X that is digital only, which I get. I mean, at this point, I think they're also just trying to figure out what the fuck they're doing. But the only reason why I would get an X is so I could put discs in it. So I don't have to put all these in the 360. Because from what I've read and in my research and figuring out what is backwards compatible and what isn't, even if it is backwards compatible, there are some, I guess you could say, emulation glitches. Like sometimes the sound stutters, sometimes cutscenes don't render, blah, 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 blah. And it makes me remember back to the PS3 being completely backwards compatible, where, unfortunately for Monachemia, it would just randomly delete my save data. So I literally had to save in 3 different slots, and as one would get deleted, I would create a new one. So I had a constant rotation of save games, but that was really the only glitch I ever had, and I used that PS3 to death, literally, because for those who've been around a while, you may remember when it died on me, and it had my copy of Street Fighter 4 trapped inside, and I ultimately had to rebuy it because of the casing that held the disk drive. Like the actual screws had like rusted shut, and the heads were like melted or something because I couldn't even get a screwdriver in there. And even me drop kicking it a couple of times, which I do not recommend. That didn't do it either. So that ultimately I had to get the PS3 I have now. Knock on wood, it continues to work, and a new copy of Street Fighter 4. But at the time, I think Ultra had come out, so it worked out. And the final pickup. This I'm actually really excited about. Not that I'm not excited about the rest, Alex. Don't be a jerk. This is the N64 Anthology. And I'm going to take the plastic off because I am going to get on this whole YouTube thumbnail train and make a stupid face and hold something up because apparently that's what gets people to click on things. All right, there. Thumbnail done. Beautiful. So this book, this was originally a Kickstarter, I believe. Back in the day, I actually bought it at Amazon because the publisher, Geeksline, they put everything up on Amazon eventually. During the, I guess you could say, the dark ages of the pandemical, this book shot up in price tremendously. And the N64 is not my favorite system, truthfully. So I had no qualms with just offing it just for some extra cash, which I think I used towards a Poly Mega, which I ultimately just canceled and got refunded for. Because did that thing ever come out? I don't even know. I know people have it, but I don't know if it ever came out officially. But hindsight's always 20/20, and it bugged me because I literally have all their other console books except for this one. And apparently a bunch of people missed this one too. Maybe it wasn't a Kickstarter. Maybe this is back when they actually did the retail releases first. And people have been clamoring for a reprint. And finally they announced one, I think on a somewhat limited basis, but you had to order it directly from them. So I ordered it, of course, and it came maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. Freshly sealed, everything else. The books are great. If you're familiar with Pat Contry's books, like the Ultimate NES Library and all that, They do it their own way, of course. Pat has a great style. I love his books too, but I love the presentation of these because it gives you some insight on the game. It gives you some stats. So, like looking at Rayman 2 here, gives you the launch dates for Europe and the US, tells you what else it was released on, how rare it is, and how much it sold if they can find the actual data, which I think is really, really interesting. Now, that's not for every game. Like Rugrats Scavenger Hunt, it doesn't tell you, but it does give you an idea of like the pack size, like, you know, how many megabytes it was, how many players, if there were any accessories. It's interesting because it's not consistent, but it gives you enough insight where you're like, huh, I didn't know that. And then sometimes they'll also include the different box arts too. And they also give some insight into the hardware and some canceled games as well. The books are really well done. I have every single entry they've done. This did have a special edition, I think, which had more stuff in it. Like the Turbo one is ridiculous. The Virtual Boy one originally came as a double pack with a Game Boy one. I didn't get the Virtual Boy one because I never had it. But that bundle itself, it was really expensive and really, really big. I have been thinking about maybe doing like read-through thing. Although Classic Game and Corley kind of has that on lock, and I don't want to be hacking him because truthfully he does a lot better. And here on the Return to Mother Base program, we film primarily in the workout area and drink Diet Coke at 7 in the morning. Anyway, I've been yammering enough. Thanks for watching. Wow, I screwed up the outro. Anyway, I've been Alex, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.